this time of year, I kind of get in a good frame of mind. We all try to balance our mental health. I'd say usually mine here is pretty good because I enjoy the holiday periods. For some people, it's very difficult, and this kind of starts to exacerbate, and that's a whole separate topic. But what gets you into what you would call a good, healthy psychological frame of mind? And is that something easy for psychologists to spot? Because frequently they're dealing with people who are on the other end of that equation. Well, let's talk about it today with our good friend Dr. John Braccio with Regional Psychological Services in East Lansing, drjohnb.com for all the podcasts. Good morning, sir. Welcome back.
Well, good morning to you, Dave. And I think it's really true. This is kind of almost like a timeout day for us because so often we're dealing with issues and concerns of a psychological nature. And today we're really talking about what are the characteristics really of a psychologically healthy person. But, not that anyone can have all of these at one particular time in full force, but typical characteristics would be that the person is appropriately able to express and experience emotions, that the person is adaptable to stress and pressure, the person is courteous and friendly, the person is authentic and honest, the person is emotionally secure and stable, the person is confident, and really the person is loving and affectionate. And now if a person could meet these characteristics, someone might come up with a few different words or do it a little differently, but basically these are the characteristics that one needs to be a complete, psychologically secure person. And it's a good thing to aim at, too. If we're not quite there, in fact, we're always working on ourselves like a good gardener does a garden. So, these are the characteristics of the psychologically healthy person.
I was going to say, though, again, for the people that you work with, I mean, it's easy, I would think, to be in your position as a professional and say day after day, boy, oh boy, there are people in this world who have problems, and they are all at my doorstep. Well, that is your profession, and so, but you don't get to see as many who check all of these boxes, and I wonder, I mean, have you ever, do you know people who check all these boxes pretty close to all of the time? Because it would seem like it's a good thing, but it's a high bar to reach just because life comes at you and people deal with it in different ways. What do you think?
Well, I think what you're making a good point. I think there are people that at times would meet all of these characteristics, okay? However, life has a way, like you say, of throwing things at you, or you can become angry, you can become jealous, you can really become upset, you can become very disappointed, and then that can really impact you from a psychologically healthy point of view. However, if we're aiming for these things, yes, I think many people can have most of this, all of it, but having it all the time would be pretty difficult. Now, Erin, who works with you there, she always seems in a good mood when I talk to her in the morning, and I'm sure that
by the end of 3 hours working with me, though, she's not. So, I mean, it's true. I understand. But even then, it's funny because and I'm not using Erin here as an example, now me necessarily, but you have brief encounters with people, so you don't know what happens on the other end. Now, when I was listening to you roll through that list, the first person that came to mind as I'm hearing all of those things, I'm thinking of my wife. She checks pretty much those boxes, if not all of them, at least a half check mark, maybe go to a full by, the end of the day or the end of the week and back off on another, but pretty darn close, which, I mean, I count myself lucky. But I'm being very serious right now because I think when you have a spouse who is a good mental frame of mind is a blessing, I think.
Well, listen, honestly, I'm going to agree and put a ditto on that. I will say, though, Dave, you said something before. It's true. Everybody hits bad stretches, bad periods where they can be depressed, they can be underemployed, they can have a bad relationship, even though they don't know why, with a friend or with a family member. And these are things that can really impact us. We can have a death in the family. We can lose a long friendship. We may be forced to take a downgrade. We may have to move. There's so many things that can really impact on one's mental health that can really make it difficult. But then I see that all within the realm of, we'll call it normality. No one leads a perfect life on earth. We just try to be as stable as we can be. And as issues and problems occur, whether it's illnesses, whether it's job situations, friendships, family problems that can occur, this is what happens in life. And it's how we adapt to them that really determines how psychologically stable we are. However, having
your number one item
is key.
Your number one item, Doc, here that you mentioned, you said appropriately, I think you said it, to express and experience emotions. Yes. And you had that really high on your list. So the emotion, you weren't going to mask them and cover them and blanket them, but you're also not going to let them rule your day. That you're going to find that equilibrium, that balance, right?
And that's why I had that as number one. You're right, Dave.
It's
because
huge.
It's how you deal with things emotionally, because we have the right to be angry at times. If someone does something inappropriate, lies, deceives, or we lose out on something that was important to us, we miss an opportunity, we forget to do something, we don't pass a test, we don't do something that is the appropriate thing to do, we're going to be upset about it, okay? And the thing to do is how do we deal with it? How do we deal with this problem, this thing that emotionally really has us upset? And that determines how the next day is going to be, the rest of the day we're in is going to be, and how effective we're going to be over time. Because if we allow emotions to overwhelm us, then we get into anger, we get into greed, we get into hatred, we get into all kinds of bad things when emotions get out of control in a negative way. So it's really, again, always the golden mean, the summum bonum of Aristotle, trying to be able to cope with things in a logical, reasonable kind of a way. This is not easy to do often when we're dealing with strong emotions, but the person who controls emotions is actually able to control themselves and really can lead a more peaceful, satisfying life. And this is something we all have to work on, because a person of high passion and high emotion has a lot of this floating around in them emotionally, and it's not that easy just to kick out. And sometimes it can be very helpful if we're dealing with difficult situations to move forward and deal with things in a strong way. However, when the evil, if you will, or the anger, the getting even, those emotions come forward, then we're dealing with emotions in an appropriate way. But the mentally healthy person, the psychologically stable person, is able to deal with things effectively. It doesn't mean they just let people roll over them, but they know how to not let themselves be overwhelmed, because if someone really is bothering you...
Well, they know when to move on, too, right? They know when to move on.
They know when to move on. You don't let somebody who's done something inappropriate to control you while they're leading their merry life. You have to be able to control your own emotions. Very, very difficult, Dave, but a skill set that the psychologically healthy person is able to contain within reason. You're never going to be 100% able to deal with all the difficulties that occur in one's life just very easily.
Yeah, I think, the old song had it right. Mama said there'd be days like this. But she didn't say it would be years and decades. She just said there'd be days, and you got to treat it as a day. And then the next one, you definitely move on. Yesterday, somebody made me not very happy on social media. Somebody with some stature and said something, frankly, idiotic. And I answered in turn, and then I said, okay, that's it. I'm cutting it off. This is not, where's it going to go? It says, no, it's going to get thermal. Do I need to go thermal nuclear here? And to that, what would the point be? So we moved on. I'm not using myself as an example of this is what you should always do. You make your own decision. But I'm saying at that point, it was immediate time to move on. Let's go. Because otherwise, it's going to mess up my day, the rest of it. I don't want to let it do that.
No, you don't want to do it.
I hope so.
You call an ending to it, Dave, because otherwise nothing will come of it. It'll just lead to more frustration, anger. And if anyone else sees that you're doing that, it also reflects negatively on you. You don't want that.
Wouldn't you say, before we go, Doc, wouldn't you say when you see somebody else who seems to check these boxes, it's okay to emulate them or even ask them, how do you maybe you're in a position where there's a lot of stress and yet you handle it so well. How do you do that? I mean, I think those are good questions to ask, don't you?
Absolutely. We learn from those around us. Modeling is such a powerful tool. One, it's your idea of asking the person, yes, also observing and understanding how they deal with stress, how they deal with frustration. Absolutely. That's the best way to learn. Finding a model, finding someone who really is able to cope with difficulties. And if you can even have a mentoring role with somebody who can really help you, it doesn't have to be someone necessarily older. It can be somebody who just is able to modulate, able to deal with emotions effectively. And that's really a key to a happy and successful life, knowing how far to go with things and when to know at the time psychologically to back off. But absolutely a good idea. Look for people, talk to people, learn from people, and make yourself more effective as you walk the road of life.
The characteristics of a psychologically healthy person. We've gone over a number of the key ones here today. Hopefully those apply to you and those around you as well. If not, you can always contact the good doctor here and his associates at Regional Psychological Services in East Lansing. And the podcast here will be at drjohnb.com. Good to talk to you, my friend. Next week we'll go into Thanksgiving, and so, which is my favorite holiday, by the way. So you don't have to bring presents or food, but I love Thanksgiving, and so I won't hear a bad word about it next week. But we'll be talking about another aspect of psychological health, and that'll be coming up 1 week from today before the holiday. Take care and stay safe, all right?
Same to you, Dave. Look forward to talking to you. Bye-bye.
All right, we'll talk then. We're back in a moment on the Morning Wake Up. Don't go away. 1320 WILS.